Hey everyone. So as I've been introduced, I'm Ovidijus, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about how public institutions can perform public scraping. Before we begin, I want to emphasize on which points I'm going to be focusing on, and that's going to be, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on how public companies can scrape differently and experience different challenges when scraping as opposed to private companies. Then I'm going to give you a specific example on how Oxylabs help a specific public institution on their web scraping endeavors. And I'm going to try and provide all of this information in a not so technical way so that anyone who hasn't been doing any scraping could understand. However, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the Q&A session after this talk. So let's begin. As you can imagine, and as I mentioned, public companies can face different challenges when scraping or when trying to scrape for their goals as opposed to private companies. And there's quite a few, but the ones I'm going to be focusing on are these three. First of all, there's a massive a massive difference of experience that public companies don't have as opposed to private companies. Web scraping and data gathering tools and systems and services and knowledge has been present in the industry for quite a while, and there's a lot of private companies who have experience with such tools. Public companies, public institutions might not have these tools available, might not have used them before, might not have employees or be able to get the employees that could utilize these systems, tools, and services. Additionally, having web scraping in the industry for so long, some private companies already have the time and resources that they can spend to experiment with these tools. This is also present when trying tools for the first time, and this is especially present in public institutions which might not have experienced public scraping before. Additionally, lastly, there's also the expectation to use web scraping tools. When you're building a project, you might sometimes build a startup project already expecting that you will be using scraping systems, tools, and services, as opposed to a public company which might not even know that they want to use or need to use scraping systems. Of course, this is also present with private companies as well sometimes, but it's much more emphasized on the public sector side. Now, again, with all of these challenges in mind, again, as I mentioned, a public institution might have some goals and might not even know that they're going to be using or going to need to use scraping infrastructure. So I'm going to give you an example. The Communications Regulatory Authority of the Republic of Lithuania is one such institution. And this institution, the CRA, has quite a few responsibilities in Lithuania that they are tasked with. The one we'll be focusing on today is their Electronic Communications Department, and specifically their Internet Regulation Department, where they have a specific goal in mind. The goal is to prevent illegal and or harmful content online, and this is the goal that they want to achieve whenever they work. You might be thinking about which types of content is legal and which types of content are they actually interested in on a day-to-day basis. And Lithuania is one of the few countries in the world that deems pornography illegal, and that's specifically the distribution and hosting of pornography. Naturally, this provides some sort of conundrum and a paradox where Lithuania does not censor internet access, and so in Lithuania, porn websites such as Pornhub are accessible from Lithuania and for Lithuanian inhabitants without any legal drawbacks. However, distributing content and hosting content on Lithuanian soil basically is illegal. Additionally, as many other countries, Lithuania also does not permit child abuse material to be posted, and this is again universal with all countries. You'll specifically also note that I've marked that non-sexual nudity is legal. Naturally, art or medical research documents, pictures are allowed, and that's a common good. Now, the CRA already has a system to tackle such content online, and what they have is a website where any Lithuanian inhabitants or citizens can report content or websites to the CRA for further investigation. You'll probably immediately realize that such a system and such a website has its own drawbacks, quite a few major drawbacks. And these are these three. There's the issue of having websites that are popular versus less popular. When you're depending on people submitting reports on illegal content, natural websites which are more likely to be traversed, more popular, are much more visited and thus have a bigger exposure and a smaller interval in which any illegal content could persist on the website. Additionally, of course, you also depend on the civilians' altruism, basically their will to submit such content to the CRA. If there's a harmful website, a malicious website with malicious users, those malicious users are probably not going to be reporting that content. So that is naturally a very big issue. And of course, last but not least, there's also a scalability issue. We are having such a system where we're passively collecting reports from civilians is almost absolutely not scalable. You can increase advertising for the website and increase education for civilians that such a system exists and such content is illegal. However, you can't dial in your efforts immediately and increase the amounts of reports you get in or analyze. Now, the CRA naturally understood all of these issues and started looking for ways where they can have a more proactive approach to tackle this issue. Now, the CRA did not exactly know what they wanted to do, and this is one of the common drawbacks of being a public institution, at least in Lithuania, at least with developing new tools, is that with the current Lithuanian governmental contract system, it's much more beneficial to have a strict criteria for the application, for the system that you want, so that you can issue the contract and get a contractee much more efficiently and accurately. The CRA, however, did not have a specific list of attributes that they want for the system. And so this is where the GovTech Challenge Series program comes in. This series is a program operating in Lithuania, a nonprofit organization where they aim to provide a platform and an event where governmental institutions can submit specific goals to the public, to private institutions, to private citizens, and get help on how they can achieve a goal, how they can solve a problem, and how they can do that efficiently with new ideas which might not even be discovered yet. And so on this platform, the CRA issued a very, very simple abstract question. How do we find illegal content online? Now, again, it's worth mentioning, as I mentioned, that at this point, neither the CRA nor the GovTech Challenge platform did not yet know that scraping is going to be a very core part in a solution to this problem, to this goal. Some of the employees might have had an idea, but that's not the main core focus of the solution. So the CRA issued a short list, a very abstract list of guidelines which they want the system to achieve. And I'm going to expand on the blue points in the slide in just a bit, but mainly they wanted to focus on content hosted on Lithuanian soil in the Lithuanian web space. They wanted the tool to discover websites because of course, they don't know all of the websites that they want to be monitoring. They wanted the system to analyze visual content, figure out which of that content is illegal, which websites host illegal content, and submit reports to the CRA in a very similar fashion to how private citizen reports come in from the website. Now, Oxylabs started discussions with the CRA through the platform and started sharing ideas on how this problem can be approached. And we expanded a little bit on the criteria and the specific goals that we wanted to achieve. And that is, we first started taking a look on what is the Lithuanian web space. Now, how do you identify that a website is hosted in Lithuania, on Lithuanian servers? How can you determine whether the website falls under the CRA's jurisdiction? A couple of ideas floated around, and we started looking into .lt domains, Lithuanian top-level domains, and is this the answer to the targeting issue? Kind of. .lt domains have a high indication that they're going to be Lithuanian or hosted on Lithuanian soil or operated by Lithuanian citizens or companies, but they don't exactly map to that. You can have a .lt domain without being Lithuanian. You can host content on in other countries. You can host content on content platforms. You can have a wide variety of divergences from being a Lithuanian website. Okay, then maybe Lithuanian IPs are the answer. Well, sure, but what are Lithuanian IP addresses? As some of you already probably know, you can sort of kind of guesstimate which country or which location an IP address is based in, but it's usually not so accurate. So when we dive down and started looking into how, of course, some of you might already know this, on how IP addresses are assigned to countries and how they are determined to be in a specific country or not, IANA is a global institution where they assign IP address blocks to regional registries in each continent, and they assign the European IP address blocks to RIPE, which is the regional registry of Europe, and maybe RIPE has a list of IP addresses of subnets that they have assigned to Lithuania. They do, but once we started looking into the data, it's not that foolproof. Because some ISPs, which operate in multiple countries in Europe, might use IP addresses that they had been allocated in one specific country. They might start using those IP addresses in a different country. That's theoretically possible. So that wasn't a foolproof, straightforward way of identifying IP address location. And again, as many websites do, and many scrapers do, we started looking into other sources. There's a thing called geolocation databases where there's third-party private companies that offer such services, and they try to guesstimate IP address location much more accurately. However, again, the data on these databases sometimes differs as well, even though it's somewhat usually more accurate than RIPE's lists. However, when you start to realize that many websites could be hosted on content delivery networks such as Cloudflare, you start realizing that this is a solution that's definitely out of scope to have been solved by the CRA on itself as a public company. So yeah, in the end, we decided that we're going to be focusing on .lt domains, mostly with filtering based on the IP geolocation database. I don't remember which one specifically we used, but we're going to use a mix and match of these two criteria to figure out a bigger list of targets we want to scrape, target and analyze, and go on from there. Now, additionally, we did agree on the term that we want the system to naturally traverse and automatically figure out new websites. That is a very, very important part of the system. In regards to analyzing image content, we specifically defined that as being static image content and not videos or GIFs, because moving content is a little bit more difficult to analyze. And we wanted to provide a basic starting point for the CRA for having a system which scrapes, and then you can build up additional things on top. We want to provide a prototype, a proof of concept, or a minimum viable product, as you call it. So again, the other criteria has not been changed, but we added a bunch of new criteria. We wanted to provide the system as pro bono for free for the CRA, and the best way to do that for us was to build the system and to provide the system as a software as a product, as opposed to a software as a service. We did not want to have to ask for a subscription or any money from the CRA. We did not want to host a platform. We wanted them to be able to expand the system on their own, build it on their own, and get the source code of the system as well. So that's what we provided as well. We decided to provide as well. And we also, naturally, as a modern IT company, aimed for the system to be scalable and expandable. The CRA agreed to all of our terms and initial proof of concept and ideas, and we started developing the system. So quickly, Oxylabs identified three main steps that the system needs to do, and this is very much common in many scraping systems that you perhaps already have built before. And at first, we want to identify the website that we need to target. So this is where we started filtering based on .lt domains first, and we expected to provide a batch of .lt domains as a starting point for the system, basically as a seed for the system to start branching out. This domain list has been gathered by Oxylabs through alternative means, but the end goal was for the CRA to collect a much bigger and much more accurate .lt domain list from Lithuanian registries, which is in progress, I believe. We're going to resolve these domains to IP addresses and match them with a geolocation database to figure out if the website is on Lithuanian soil. And we're also going to discover new targets, as I mentioned. Now, the system also accepts IP addresses as target websites, but again, as many of you probably already know, trying to scrape IP addresses and expect a website to answer is not that reliable because many servers, many IP addresses host multiple websites, and you need to know the domain name, the domain name to get an accurate response. Now, the second step is actually collecting the content, which is scraping itself, and this is again something which many of you probably already have done before, and because of that and because of legal and secretive reasons, I'm not going to delve down into how that has been done exactly. But again, this is where Oxylabs shine, where we have the experience to target websites and scrape websites. Now, as you probably can imagine, because the target website list is massive, dynamic and ever-changing, and many websites are expected to be quite generic, the scraping systems and algorithms themselves are pretty basic as well. So there's nothing too surprising there, but the parameters are naturally tunable by the CRA once they're running the system. Now, lastly, we need to identify illegal content and mark them and submit it to the CRA. Now, this is probably the most important part, but it's pretty basic. At the prototype level, we submit it to the CRA. We've looked online for any open source machine learning models which are trained for sexual content and age content. Specifically, we are looking for any sexual material and marking the probabilities of that material based on criteria and submitting flagging the content based on that. Additionally, we're also able to use a different model to determine the age of faces in pictures. And this is to flag any potential child abuse in pictures as a higher priority to the CRA. We're also going to be using. We've also used a police-provided image hash database from the police, and this is a database consisting of known hashes of images which contain known child abuse material. This helps us very quickly, very performantly figure out which content is already known to be child abuse and submit it immediately to the CRA. Now, all these steps are roughly visualized in this graph here, and looks like basically a chain of process. And again, this might be something that you're not that unfamiliar with. And again, as I mentioned, we used different technologies to make the system scalable and modular, so that the CRA, once they have the resources and additional contracts that they need, that they can expand, improve the machine learning algorithms, models, and improve the accuracy of the system, and fine-tune their parameters for success. Now, speaking of success, over 2-month usage period, these are the numbers that the CRA noticed. They've been able to scan almost 300,000 websites, Lithuanian websites, for content. Several police investigations have been started, and several notices have been submitted to the Journalist Ethics Committee in Lithuania. And these numbers might seem big or small as compared to maybe your systems, but again, the CRA expected the system not to be run in the background 24/7. They wanted a system that would be able to process batch jobs. So yeah, again, as a basic influx meter of how many reports, how many websites, and how many images are reported to the CRA using the system, as opposed to the original hotline, a website for submitting, we've noticed basically almost a 5 times increase in reports. And this is very useful, although I will admit some of those naturally were false positives. But again, this is a system that needs to be fine-tuned using other technologies and other modules other than scraping. And again, this brings me to my main point. Scraping is just a part of their solution to their problem, and they needed that part to be unlocked. Now, we've been pretty happy with the way we've unlocked this specific challenge for them, and we're able to provide the ability for them to improve the system and fine-tune the system for their needs further on. What's next? Oxylabs is continuing their partnership with RRT, albeit on a much smaller scale, where we provide consultation and tech support for the system, and we're helping them figure out on how they want to improve the system further with other companies and maybe other institutions. Now, inspired because of this, Oxylabs has also opened a 4 beta program where we're focusing on helping institutions, much like the CRA, in getting the infrastructure, knowledge, and experience that they need to unlock their solutions, to prevent scraping from being a block for their goals. And we're focusing on, again, on public institutions, on academic institutions, on academic researchers, on any nonprofit social missions, basically anything. So if you have any projects in mind which you want to, which you might think might benefit from such a system, don't hesitate to contact us on these links above. Again, so thank you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the Q&A session in a moment.
Well, thank you, Ovidijus. That was really interesting. That was really interesting to listen to.
No problem.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I think I rushed a little bit, but yeah, it's quite fun.
Oh, I think you did really well. It's usually a bit stressful at the beginnings when you kind of get into it. We have a little bit of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and ask you.
Of course.
So you spoke about using open source machine learning models for pornographic content and age detection. Could you elaborate on which models are these? Thanks.
I'm not sure I remember the specific project names from GitHub, although if you do want the specific projects we've used, don't hesitate to contact us on in the emails I've provided, or just basically on any Oxylabs.
You can ask on OxySlack.
Yeah, and I'll see what I can do and figure out the URLs and send them to you, but I just don't remember,
Okay. So yeah, you can write us on our OxySlack, and we can get the links for the GitHub. The next question is, I'm not sure, but I understood that an IP address wasn't linked to a particular location. That's what he thought, or she thought. Is it what you meant?
Yeah, we did try linking an IP address with a location, although we did not need to have a very accurate description of the location. All we needed to know is that the specific IP address is associated with being in Lithuania. And again, this is something that we didn't really need to improve upon other than what the CRA has already been doing, as in they've already been analyzing and investigating websites and figuring out whether they have the jurisdiction to operate with those websites, or do they need to report it to other institutions in other countries. So all we needed to basically do is have a reasonable suspicion that this is an IP address in Lithuania. And that was enough for us. So there's a variety of ways. Again, as I've mentioned, a variety of ways on which we could have achieved that. We chose a geolocation database, a third-party database. But yeah, a lot of things could work. Yeah.
Okay. Another from Fabian. He says, "Thanks a lot. And can your pipeline automatically fill the search engine removal form?"
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes.
The last
can your pipeline automatically fill the search engine's removal form?
Search engine's removal form. I'm not exactly sure what that means. If you're wondering on whether we can utilize the search function in websites, on websites who have a search function, then I think no. I don't think we've enabled that. We've also to expand on that, we also did not look into ways where we can circumvent any login forms or any blocks to automated scraping, because we were targeting quite a massive list of websites that we wanted to have records on. And even though we might not be able to dive deep into some of them, that was acceptable for the conditions here. Again, all of the criteria, the scraping criteria, can be fine-tuned, can be expanded, and can be developed further. And that's what we expected. But at the moment, as the system stands right now, we don't fill in any search forms. No.
Okay. Okay. Another question. How did you find the experience working with the government sector?
Oh, that was quite a journey for me personally. Historically, I'm very skeptical of public institutions and their quality of work. Where, you know, as I mentioned, with governmental contracts, most of the time you're looking for the lowest bidder to complete any work, or but I've been very pleasantly surprised by the quality, eagerness, and optimism, and any fluidity and flexibility of employees, at least specifically in the CRA, because I really liked working with them. I'm sure they liked working with us as well, and I would gladly work with them again. So
nice.
That was fun. Yeah.
Okay, that's really nice to hear. It's really nice to hear. Do you think the CRA could have completed this project without Oxylabs?
Well, that's both a yes and no answer. I believe it's naturally possible because we're not the only company in the world that does scraping. However, I think it was quite fortunate because we were able to not just provide in my opinion, world-leading knowledge of scraping to them, but we were also able to provide it for free, and we are locals to them. We are based right here in Lithuania, and we were able to, cooperate much more efficiently with them.
Okay. I see a question. What is the CRA? So could you just clear up?
Oh yeah, the CRA is the authority, the regulatory authority of the Republic of Lithuania, where they're focusing on communications, the communications regulatory authority. What they're trying to do is, among other things, and among these things that I mentioned today, they also issue, frequency bands for LTE radios. They control, I think even postal services, that was something they control. They control and regulate services on TV channels and as such.
Okay.
So that's what they do, yeah.
Yes. Also, coming back to the search form, there was a correction. I think what they meant is that you can usually send a request to Google search engines to remove specific results from being indexed or shown in results.
Oh yeah, no, that was out of scope for this system. That is certainly possible to do, but that would be somewhat of a standalone thing, in my opinion, because even with such a system in place, this is not the only channel that the CRA collects reports from. So if they wanted to have a faster and easier way of automatically filling in such forms and preventing such content from being published and shown in results on Google, for example, they could have a system that takes all of these channels into account. So no, we did not do that.
Okay. Thanks for clearing.
Yeah, all good.
And the last question. Can the finished product be used by other governments or organizations?
Yeah, both from a technical and an ethical standpoint, this system can be used by other governments or public institutions. I'm not exactly sure on the legal ways we would need to approach that. However, if there's any government, any institution, or any company which wants the system to be used, I believe don't hesitate, again, to contact us at any form online, and we'll be happy to investigate and look for a solution on how you can use it.
I have one question
Sure.
from myself. What was the most difficult or the biggest challenge in overall doing this GovTech challenge?
It's kind of hard to say. It was the whole challenge and the whole project was quite new for us. Not a lot of us has worked with public institutions before. I personally have not worked with a project from the ground up before, so that was a very new experience for me, and in many ways challenging personally. However, as a company, I think what also provided quite a bigger challenge than what we expected was the needed time and resources that we need to allocate to the project. We expected to be finished with the project much sooner than we did. as many public projects go. And we did not expect the amount of time throughout each day that we needed to divert our engineers from working on Oxylabs products to this product. That became a challenge in the last parts of the project, where it felt like the project has already been built, the system is already kind of working, and we just need to figure out how to fix the last bugs and make the last minor adjustments. And that's where I believe we had a lot of difficulties on figuring out, yes, we need to do this, and once we're done with this, then we can relax and work on our own projects. Okay. So yeah, I would say that's it.
I keep saying that it's the last question, but it's not.
No, go ahead. I'm quite happy to answer.
Another one.
Yeah.
So awesome presentation. And what was any other type of content in scope for the project, like drugs, weapons, etc.?
In some ways, yes. We were considering on having a system where we could analyze not just visual content, but text-based content as well. And I'll have to add that with the current system, with it being modular, that kind of a module, subsystem can be introduced, a microservice can be introduced where you're also analyzing text as well. However, we did feel that we wanted to provide the smallest, the most minimal viable product that we wanted, so that we already have the ball rolling. It's as opposed to fixing a car, it's much easier to improve the snowball as it's rolling here. So it's a little bit different. So in terms of non-visual content, we thought about it, we decided not to. In terms of other types of visual content, that was never on the table really. I think the CRA is mainly focused on such content as I've described, sexual content, because that's where they feel that maybe the most reports could come in, that there's the most content available. So yeah, we didn't really think about it, any, as we mentioned, terrorism stuff or something, but it is possible in the future.
Okay.